It is hot. It is hot. It is hot. Don't I even have the air conditioner? Hold on, y'all. Oh Lord, hold on. Okay, I'm back. What? Sorry about this. We have some stuff that's been in the news. Let's get it.
Breaking right now on Morning News Now, a big win for President Trump on Capitol Hill. Early this morning, Senate lawmakers passing a $70 billion bill to fund immigration enforcement without language banning the president's anti-weaponization fund. Plus, former Trump advisor John Bolton set to plead guilty in a classified documents case. We'll take you to Washington. Developing this morning, escalation and uncertainty in the Middle East. Iran-backed Hezbollah rejecting a deal to extend a ceasefire with Israel as Israeli forces launch a new round of attacks on Lebanon. Now, mounting concerns about the possibility of a peace deal between the U.S. and Iran. We'll bring you in. Plus, alarming findings from an investigation into a horrifying collision involving a United Airlines flight landing at Newark Airport last month. What the plane's co-pilot reportedly told the NTSB about the moments before it happened. And feeling hot, hot, hot. That's right, temperatures on the rise for much of the country, with some cities on track to break records later today. We are tracking the conditions as you start. And there's a little bit of good news to start this Friday morning. We made it almost to the weekend. Thanks so much for being with us. Good morning, I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe is on assignment today. We're going to begin this hour with breaking news from Washington. So overnight, Senate Republicans passed their $70 billion immigration enforcement bill that would fund ICE and Border Patrol through the end of President Trump's term. After roughly 18 hours of voting, senators voted 52 to 47 with just one Republican, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska.
Thank you.
The GOP faced several uphill battles advancing this bill over the president's shifting priorities. Well, funding for his White House ballroom and language about that proposed anti-weaponization fund were major sticking points. And
I mean, what the hell? Where are we getting this money from? $70 billion for an immigration enforcement bill. Again, where the hell is the money coming from?
News White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us now with more on this. Monica, good morning. Thanks for starting your Friday with us. This all happened in the dead of night, so walk us through what is and is not in this bill.
Of course, always in the dead of night.
Hours of debate with many lawmakers trying to attach amendments to this that ultimately failed. So really, this is just going to be immigration funding for ICE and for Border Patrol, about $70 million, as you calculated. What's really interesting about this is that this was the money that had to be taken out after we saw that debate over funding when there was the government shutdown that was extended, and then also, of course, after the immigration action that we saw that led to the death of 2 U.S. citizens in Minnesota. So they pulled this out of there, and this is how they had to pass that.
Be
But
back
again,
in a second.
there were attempts to try to add other things to this, other provisions, other amendments, but all of that failed. So this is really just immigration funding that will last throughout the entirety now of President Trump's second term. Savannah.
Monica, so the Senate able to move forward with voting on this legislation after forcing the administration to abandon plans for, as we're just discussing here, this $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund. But Democrats are worried that essentially that's not how this is going to pan out, but they won't stick to their word. Is there any language in this bill that did make it in there that would limit or prohibit future development of that fund? How will that work?
There isn't any right now. There were no guardrails that were attached to this, despite many different attempts, and despite the fact that you did see some Republicans joining this language that Democrats had introduced that would have tried to make this something that won't ever become a reality. But again, that was not successful, and so it's not a part of this legislation. And Democrats have raised concerns about that, and they've said that they want to be sure that this is not something that's going to continue. In fact, there was legislation that would have prohibited payouts to those who assaulted police officers or law enforcement on January 6th. Again, that failed. But it comes as there's a lot of mixed messaging, Savannah, even out of the administration, because the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, tried to sort of put a fine point on this, saying that they were not moving forward with the fund, that the Department of Justice was going to abandon it altogether. But it's President Trump who has sort of left a little bit of wiggle room, saying that he would abide by the courts, that he would need to check with the lawyers, but again, leaving that door just a little bit open.
Monica, what happens next with this bill?
So this would now have to go to the House in order to be passed and go to the president's desk for signature. But they are leaving town and they are not going to come back until next week. And so we expect that might happen as early as Monday night. It's possible the House could advance this. But we should note, Savannah, that the president had set a June 1st deadline for wanting to get this priority all wrapped up. So this pushes a little bit beyond that.
All right, Monica Alba, thank you so much. Well, former National Security Advisor and Ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton, is expected to plead guilty to one count of retaining classified information. It is part of a plea deal with federal prosecutors. According to two sources familiar with the matter, he is accused of sharing confidential details about national security in an electronic diary with family members. This is the first major legal victory for President Trump and his quest to punish his perceived political enemies. Now, Bolton, who served for Mr. Trump during his first term in office, has been one of the president's fiercest critics. NBC News legal affairs reporter Gary Brownback joins us now with more. Gary, good morning. Great to have you with us. So let's just go back to the beginning and some of those details here. This electronic diary with family. Bolton was first arrested in October for allegedly mishandling that classified information. He pleaded not guilty then. So how did we get here? Why did he change his plea?
Yeah, of the political prosecutions that we've seen during this Trump administration, this is certainly one of the most serious and one of the most legitimate ones. We saw that John Bolton was indicted back in October by a federal grand jury in the state of Maryland on 8 counts of transmission of national defense information and 10 counts of unlawful retention of that national defense information. He was keeping the information on an electronic diary of sorts, potentially like a notes app in an iPhone. A source telling NBC News the reason he's doing this is because apparently he says it's what leaders do and taking responsibility. And he says that he understands that if he went to trial, this would mean, which essentially would be the disclosure of many, many more classified documents that he would need to reveal, essentially doing this for the good of America, according to a source close to John Bolton.
Gary, Bolton's expected back in court at the end of the month. What kind of sentence is he facing?
So he pled not guilty back in October, so he will have to come back before a judge in Maryland at the end of the month and plead guilty. He could be facing anywhere from probation to up to 5 years in prison, and he also may have to pay up to $2.5 million in restitution to the federal government because of these alleged acts.
Multiple DUIs, a hit and run arrest, a cocaine trafficking conviction. That's
Considering Bolton and the president's tense, contentious history, their relationship, how is the White House responding to this plea change? Have we heard from the president on it?
It has been a real roller coaster for Donald Trump and John Bolton, to say the least, in terms of what their relationship has looked like over the past 10 years or so. The White House hasn't been commenting over the past 24 hours about this particular plea change, but the president is no fan at the moment. John Bolton called him a nasty guy back when he was first indicted in October. Certainly the White House is going to be pleased to see that this is actually one of their political prosecutions that is going in their way, the right way.
Mr. Trump's personal attorney, Todd Blanche, is poised to become the U.S. Attorney General. He's actually already been the acting head of the Justice Department since the president fired Pam Bondi. Do we think, given that information and the relationship there between the two, Gary, that we could see some more targeted investigations into these enemies while Mr. Trump's in office?
It's really become a laundry list of people that they have been going after even to this point. In addition James, John Brennan, right? Just the list goes on. And of course, that list can go on. And Todd Blanche, I think, would like to see it go on. But it all depends on what the federal grand juries do in these U.S. attorney districts around the country. If these U.S. attorneys go to the people and say, hey, this is what the charges that we think should be filed, it's up to grand juries to indict. And so it all matters what they think, and that's what we saw in the Eastern District of Virginia with James Comey and Richard James. That didn't work out all the time. And so it all depends on what these grand juries end up doing around the country.
Okay, Gary Grumbach, thank you very much. Well, now let's get to the latest in the war with Iran and the continued uncertainty over any potential of a deal between the U.S. and Iran. President Trump told reporters he'd be honored to meet with Iran's supreme leader if it meant a possible deal. This all comes as the leader of the Iran-backed Hezbollah militant group is rejecting the latest ceasefire agreement reached between Israel and the Lebanese government. New video shows smoke billowing earlier today in southern Lebanon following Israeli strikes reported by Lebanon's state news agency. NBC News chief foreign correspondent
Tap screen, please. Please tap the screen.
Hopes that a new ceasefire deal in Lebanon would encourage a broader peace agreement in the Middle East, specifically one between the United States and Iran, are fading quickly this morning after that U.S.-brokered ceasefire didn't last a single day. Hezbollah formally rejected it, calling it a surrender agreement, and it was very unlikely to hold because Hezbollah and the Israeli government have very different understandings of what a ceasefire should mean between the two groups. According to the latest proposal, Hezbollah was supposed to stop fighting, put down its weapons, and leave southern Lebanon, moving above the north of the Litani River. Hezbollah said it couldn't accept those, and Hezbollah says a real ceasefire, which it wants, should see Israeli troops leaving Lebanon altogether, which is something the Israelis have vowed not to do. So they are speaking past each other, and it is not a good sign for reaching a peace deal with Iran, because the Iranian Revolutionary Guard once again said that unless there's a deal in Lebanon, there will be no deal between Washington and the United States.
All right, Richard, thank you so much. Well, the weather is another big story this morning because summer heat is officially here for tens of millions of people. Temperatures, Bill, I know 10 to 20 degrees above the average. This is all over the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. We've got details now in our forecast with Bill Karen. Hey, Bill.
Oh, good morning, and it's almost like a summer Friday. I mean, June is, in the meteorology world, we consider June, July, August summer, and it certainly is going to feel like it. The only issue this time of year is when the air is not moving much, we don't have much of a breeze, and it's hot, we get a problem, so we get some pollution alerts, and we do have air quality alerts in numerous areas: Atlanta, South Carolina, the Greensboro area, Fort Wayne, Cincinnati is also in this, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C. So if you're one of those sensitive groups, this could be, you may notice it a little later this afternoon, or if you're looking towards the sky and may see a little haze out there, and that's because of the pollution that's caused under this weather pattern. So this is warm, if not hot, but it's not humid. You probably felt that yesterday. It's kind of, even this morning, it's really not that bad. It's not like a summer heat wave where you wake up in the morning and it's already stifling and you're already sweating when you walk outside. That's not the case today. Many areas are in the 50s and 60s, but we're jumping up into like the mid-90s. So it's going to be pretty extreme temperatures now, considering what you're going to see later on this afternoon. So we're going to call it 92 in D.C., 94 on Saturday. New York, right around 90 both days here. Philadelphia, very hot today. Richmond, same for you. And Raleigh, one of the hotter spots, mid-90s the next 2 days. But again, the humidity is bearable. As we head towards the end of the weekend, kind of back to normal, and then the next week doesn't look any extreme. Temperatures from Raleigh go like 99, 95 to 90.
Dang.
Richmond, 85. New York City back in the upper 80s. And that's kind of where we should be. So as far as the forecast goes, heading through the weekend, we'll be watching the worst weather, most likely East Texas, Central Texas into Louisiana. Numerous rounds of showers and thunderstorms. So that's your Saturday. Isolated severe storms, too, from northern Indiana, northern Ohio, our friends from Cleveland heading up to Erie, possible, even the southern tier of New York, the Binghamton areas, State College, Pennsylvania. Those are all stops that could have some strong storms. On Sunday, we'll watch that chance of some strong storms and a flood risk here, especially areas of the southeast. I mean, we do have some bad weather out there this morning, Savannah. We always have bad weather somewhere in this large country of ours. If you're in Milwaukee, umbrella, rain boots, not going to be a fun morning for the kids at the bus stop, too. It is going to pour, even with some areas of light to get them.
All right, Bill Karen's a lot going on. Thank you so much.
Hey, 3 days before I hand over my Social Security when a couple
bills no more. So I called my sister. Turns out she got so much. Well, Karen Reed has filed a lawsuit against the law enforcement agencies in Massachusetts that investigated her case 1 year after she was acquitted of murder in her police officer boyfriend's death. The lawsuit filing reveals a history of racist and sexist messages from 2 investigators in her case, which she claims led to false accusations. NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda has the details and a warning: some of the language here is offensive.
A year after Karen Reed walked out of a Massachusetts court acquitted of murder.
I could not be standing here without these amazing supporters.
The 46-year-old is leveling her own bombshell allegations against the police departments that investigated her for her police officer boyfriend's 2022 death, unearthing decade-old vulgar voicemails that Reed's lawyers say demonstrate a culture of bias and corruption.
You want a filthy pig that used to do dirty things to. You don't want some, like, dope baby you don't want it done.
That was the case's eventual lead investigator, Michael Proctor, according to the complaint, who you can hear also used racial slurs describing a multi-car accident.
Take your time. I saw it was involved, so that would
You're racist MF.
Let them die.
While Proctor's attorney says years-old comments
Typical
had no bearing
Boston.
whatsoever on the investigation, Reed's lawyers say they show an embedded culture of bigotry, misogyny, systemic failures, and institutional rot within Massachusetts State Police and Town of Canton Police, which they allege ultimately led to Reed being wrongly accused.
She was drunk. She hit him, and she left him to die.
The new lawsuit also lists a trove of disturbing texts from Proctor and Canton Police Sergeant Sean Good. Good allegedly calling the Boston mayor a little C word and writing the governor can suck my. Good, who did not respond to our request for comment, resigned from his position this week, and Proctor was fired last year. Emily Ikeda, NBC News.
All right, well, this morning we are learning more about the frightening moments leading up to when a United plane collided with a light pole on the New Jersey Turnpike last month. The NTSB has released its early findings on the incident, reporting that the plane was flying too slow and far too low before landing. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the details.
New NTSB photos show the deep gashes to the bottom and tire of a United Airlines plane after hitting a light pole on the Jersey Turnpike while landing at Newark Airport last month. Dash cam and surveillance captured the moment the pole crashed into the windshield of the tractor trailer.
Dang it.
The driver suffered minor injuries. Now, a new NTSB report says as the plane was coming in for a landing in gusty winds, the first officer warned the veteran captain, hey, you are slow. Then moments later, you're still slow and a little low. The captain told investigators he looked outside and I thought we were low, but the warning came seconds before landing. That's when he heard a thump. Flight attendants reported a loud bang as the Boeing 767 crashed into a 15-foot pole.
They should not have been that low, no question about it.
On this graph, this line shows what the plane's descent slope should have been, while this red line shows its actual descent. Pilots on approach look to a runway's landing or PAPI lights like these. 2 white and 1 or 2 red mean they're lined up properly. But the NTSB reports the United crew would have seen 4 reds, a big warning they were too low.
If you see all red, it says that you're going to land and touch down before of those lights, and that is not good.
United has said it's cooperating with the investigation and has told the NTSB it's reminded United pilots not to undershoot a runway. Back to you.
All right, wow, Tom, thank you so much. Well, a Minnesota prosecutor now says that anti-ICE protesters who faced federal charges will not face any additional state charges. So this all stems from the anti-immigration enforcement demonstrations you probably remember, specifically when dozens of protesters interrupted a church service back in January. You might remember former CNN journalist Don Lemon was among the group. The protesters say they have learned that one of the church pastors was also an ICE official who was involved in the Minnesota operations. The U.S. Justice Department brought federal civil rights charges against 39 people for their church interruption in the wake of the Renee Good killing. The Minnesota prosecutor says that there isn't enough current evidence to support adding state charges against them. Well, we have much more to come here on Morning News Now on this Friday morning. Later this hour, new developments in the search for a woman reported missing by her husband in the Bahamas. We'll tell you about the key piece of evidence just seized. First, though, after the break, Russian President Vladimir Putin set to take the world stage days after Ukraine intensifies its attacks. We'll be right back.
Are you getting less than $3,340 in Social Security and you're a senior on Medicare or Medicaid? Here's some fantastic news. They've recently updated policies to help with skyrocketing prices. And guess what?
Welcome back. Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to give remarks today at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. The event is referred to as Putin's Davos. It's been targeted by Ukraine, which launched hundreds of drones that hit an oil terminal, sending black smoke wafting over the city. In response, Putin says Russia will strengthen its air defenses. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons is there, and he has the latest details for us. Keir, good morning.
Good morning, President Putin and President Zelensky. For attention this morning. Hours before Putin gives a keynote speech here in St. Petersburg, Zelensky writing him a 2,000-word open letter in which he says war is the Russian leader's personal choice and suggests that his very existence would be threatened if he doesn't stop the conflict. This morning, President Putin is preparing for a major address in St. Petersburg, just days after the city was targeted by Ukrainian drones. Speaking this week, the Russian leader conceding he needs to strengthen the country's air defenses, but insisting Russia is gaining ground in Ukraine. In reality, the front lines remain all but frozen amid near daily exchanges of drone strikes, this ambulance driver making a lucky escape in Ukraine. Ukraine's President Zelensky writing an open letter to Putin, repeating his call for a face-to-face meeting, saying it's time to end this war that has now lasted more than 4 years. President Trump responding to the overture.
I think it would be great if they should.
But the Kremlin quickly demanding Zelensky should come to them. Putin believes when he met with Trump in Alaska last August, they agreed Ukraine would surrender territory in exchange for security. It's an offer Kyiv has publicly ruled out. In a rare interview, a Russian oligarch who is under sanctions says Russia is under great economic pressure, but surviving. Whoever tells you sanctions do not work is wrong, 77-year-old billionaire Vladimir Yevtushenko says. I understand that sanctions will be lifted only when the armed confrontation comes to an end. This is a matter of time. Unfortunately, we may not live to see that time.
President Putin is always surrounded by security. Just this morning, more drones targeted Moscow. And anyone in the audience for this address today has had to have a PCR test for COVID and flu. Inevitably, the information the Russian leader gets about the war also mostly comes from those who surround him. Guys?
All right, Keir, thank you so much. We've got more international headlines now. Chinese President Xi Jinping is set to make a rare visit to North Korea. NBC News international correspondent Molly Hunter joins us now to take us around the world in 60 seconds. Hi, Molly.
Savannah, good morning to you. I will do my best, and we are starting in North Korea, where Xi Jinping will make a visit to Pyongyang, his first in nearly 7 years. Both countries made the announcement this morning that Xi will be making a full state visit next Monday and Tuesday. Moving to the Bahamas, the U.S. Coast Guard has seized the dinghy from local authorities in the Bahamas that Lynette Hooker's husband, Brian Hooker, claimed she bounced off when she disappeared. This is according to a U.S. official familiar with the case. The dinghy will be brought back to Florida, and the Coast Guard says it is a key piece of evidence in this investigation into Lynette's disappearance, which is ongoing. And finally, some very cute baby animals to start your weekend. 4 endangered Sumatran tiger cubs made their big debut yesterday at an Indonesian zoo, marking another success in the country's endangered species conservation program. Savannah, they vamped for the press, they bounced around the pen. You can hear actually in the video all the click of cameras. They put on a very good show for the assembled press. Savannah?
Oh, my goodness. Well, they are super adorable, so I understand. Molly, thank you so much. Well, now we're going to stay with some international news and bring you this incredible story of survival on Mount Everest. A Sherpa guide missing for nearly a week has been found on the mountain after rescuers spotted him crawling toward base camp. NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer has the
I
story.
don't even see how he survived.
A miracle on Mount Everest. A
A Sherpa guide found crawling back to base camp 6 days after he went missing.
Dang.
Dawa Sherpa seen here moments after he was found. I fell from a ladder into a crevasse, he says. For 2 days and nights I survived on ice. The 52-year-old seasoned guide was last seen around 23,600 feet, the so-called death zone, where conditions are harsh and oxygen too thin to sustain human survival. Search and rescue teams scoured the mountain for days before he appeared around the ice wall, frostbitten but alive, and swiftly airlifted from the mountain. At the hospital, his wife and daughter were overwhelmed. We asked for photos, and only then were we sure, she said. They had already started his funeral ritual, convinced he was gone. This climbing season, a busy one on the world's highest peak, after a massive chunk of ice blocked the route to the top. A record 274 people summiting Mount Everest in a single day last month, causing concerns about garbage and over-tourism. But this is also one for the history books, a remarkable story of survival. NBC News, Beijing.
Just incredible. Coming up, growing concerns about the Ebola outbreak in Africa. When we come back, why some experts say it could be even worse than we realize. I'll tell you the latest on the efforts to keep it out of the U.S. Stay with us. We're back with a look at the Ebola outbreak that's rapidly spreading across Central Africa and the global effort to contain it. The latest data from the CDC shows more than 300 confirmed cases across the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda, with more than 60 deaths. Some officials suspect the actual death toll, though it might be more than double that number. It comes as health workers on the ground are dealing with challenges from dwindling supplies and the lack of any available vaccine to prevent the spread of this rare strain. Well, now the outbreak has reached a militia-controlled region that is too dangerous for health workers to access. For more on this, I am joined now by Dr. Samantha Nutt. She's the founder of the humanitarian relief organization War Child USA in Canada and a board-certified public health specialist. Dr. Nutt, good morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Savannah. Thank you.
Incredible work that you're doing, and I think you have an understanding that a lot of us don't of the region and of exactly what's going on the ground. You spend a lot of time in this region, so tell us just how tough this is. What is it like on the ground right now? What are your staff telling you?
This is one of the most challenging areas of the world, especially because when you're talking about the Eastern Congo border, this is the epicenter of that conflict. So you have to deal with roving militia groups. Access to populations in need is very, very challenging. Frequent attacks on aid workers, on health facilities. In addition to that, it's a very migrant population. This is the heart of the mining industry within Eastern Congo. People coming and going all the time, not just within urban centers and back to their communities, but also across local borders, which is why we have seen spread, for example, to Uganda. So you're talking about a very displaced, very impoverished community, as well as facing a significant number of militia groups, which is very, very challenging all around.
And I mentioned this rare strain. Tell us what it is that we're seeing, how it's different, and how that makes it difficult to treat.
Well, this isn't a strain that we've really seen much of in the past decade. So the usual amount of research that has gone into other Ebola strains around identifying vaccines and monoclonal antibodies, which is the treatment that we've been using in other outbreaks, these do not exist. In addition, the testing has not been terribly efficient in regards to this particular strain as well. So all of these are combining to mean that we have very few tools in the toolbox, except for the old school business of contact tracing, following up, making sure people are isolating and following procedures and protocols. But this is all happening against a backdrop of very few resources, very limited capacity in a country where the health infrastructure is already under strain.
And as you just referenced a moment ago, war-torn regions. How is it possible for healthcare workers like yourself, for volunteers, for people to even treat people at all, even reach them in areas like this? How do you work against that backdrop?
it's, to be honest with you, it's absolutely brutal. You're talking about having to deal with militia groups where most of those who are in them are between the ages of 14 and 18 years of age. They are heavily armed. You have attacks on aid convoys. You have looting of supplies. You have attacks on hospitals, on doctors, on all of those who are necessary to be able to provide continuity of care and support and identify those cases and make sure that we are containing this particular epidemic. So it is as I said, one of the most challenging places in the world. On top of that, we're looking at dramatic cuts to humanitarian spending, USAID cuts, but also other governments throughout the world have followed suit. So the usual resources, networks, the infrastructure, the funding, the capacity that would exist under normal circumstances and that have existed during previous outbreaks simply is not there. And that is very frightening.
You talk about the spread within Africa. There's obviously a conversation and a concern going on. Does it spread beyond Africa? What do you say to that?
That risk is very low. Ebola is not a very efficient virus in the sense that it requires pretty sustained contact. It's not a respiratory virus. You can't get it from sitting next to somebody on a plane. You have to have an exchange of bodily fluids. You have to have close contact. So in that sense, it's not like COVID. We don't have that same degree of worry, but it is something we need to follow, and we need to really be addressing it at its source. And the challenge is that at its source, we are seeing more cases, and we are seeing an underfunded response that deserves and needs urgent international attention.
Let's talk about that. What people could do to try to help somebody watching at home and knowing that the humanitarian response has been very difficult to deploy. What can someone do to help?
Well, the most important thing they can do is to actually invest in and donate to organizations that are involved in the region, not just in the Congo, but also in South Sudan and Uganda, other areas that have been affected. And in addition to this sort of acute phase and providing support to humanitarian organizations that are dealing with the front lines of this crisis, it's also important to remember there are a significant number of challenges facing this region.
Tap the screen, please.
Violence and instability,
Please
and
tap the
addressing
screen.
those over the long term, which is exactly the kind of work that War Child does throughout the world, reduces the vulnerability and reduces the overall global threat.
Okay, that's why I put
We
my
can't
glass.
ignore conflicts and crises that are taking place, particularly in Africa, and especially this is one of the worst conflicts that we have witnessed in the last couple of decades. More than 5 million people have lost their lives. It is not a coincidence that this is happening in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Those vulnerabilities are longstanding and entrenched, and we need to meaningfully address them over the long term.
Dr. Samimbuna, thank you so much. Fascinating conversation, really good information, and also about how we can all help. Appreciate your time. Well, while some students are wrapping up their high school careers during this graduation season, others are getting ready to apply to college this coming fall, of course. While preparing for standardized tests can cost students hundreds, even thousands of dollars. For many, though, that is out of reach. One teenager in Tampa, though, has created an SAT prep app to help students for a fraction of the cost. The app that uses AI, it already has tens of thousands of users. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch spoke with the creator, who is so young, he hasn't even taken the SAT himself yet.
For generations of high schoolers, getting ready for the daunting SAT meant cracking open hefty practice test books or time with tutors. Now, one Tampa, Florida teenager wants to give test takers a new path to success.
It can get really expensive, and then on top of that, the SAT, like the way you learn, right? It's not really a one-way thing for every single person.
According to a recent study by Private Prep, for comprehensive SAT prep, students typically spend 20 to 30 hours with a private tutor at a cost ranging from $1,600 to over $10,000. With those challenges in mind, 16-year-old Eric McDonald created ACEIT, a digital SAT prep app fueled by artificial intelligence that costs about $80 for a full year. There's also a free version.
What ACEIT does is they circle a bunch of questions, right? And it sees where they struggle and where they succeeded.
To see if ACEIT really works, we dusted off the graphing calculator and turned to someone who took the SAT almost 15 years ago.
I haven't had interest looking at this.
First, I tried some College Board questions, focusing on the math section. Then we moved over to ACEIT. ACID also offers an AI chat features.
All right, areas to improve, nonlinear functions. I would agree.
So you can ask for more explanation on questions you get wrong. Can you really trust an AI tutor designed by someone who still has not taken the SAT himself?
I wouldn't necessarily kind of thing that they put all their effort into. And what ACID does is it kind of breaks that fourth wall. And you can use this whenever you want. You can use it on the subway station. You can use it walking home from school.
Some students, like McDonald's friend Matthew Gibbons, say they're using it and already seeing results.
Since my last PSAT, which I got a 1100 on, and after using ACID for a decent amount of time, I've been more up to like a 1400.
And Gibbons has no plans of abandoning the app anytime soon.
I can't really afford a tutor. I feel like even if I don't feel super confident on what the AI says, I can research about those question types and it just gives me an idea of what to focus on.
The College Board did not comment specifically about ACID when NBC News reached out, but the organization said in part, providing world-class SAT practice at no cost is central to College Board's mission. The organization pointing to 5 specific ways.
My hesitation would be if it just contributes to this passive learning of guessing as you go along.
Anna Homayoun, founder of Luminaria Learning Solutions, says at the end of the day, nothing beats taking a test.
The most effective way to prep for an exam like the SAT is to take full-length practice tests under testing conditions and go through every question you get wrong and understand why you got it wrong.
Jesse Kirsch, NBC News.
Do not miss that period of life, right? Coming up on Morning News Now, a heartbreaking reality for student athletes across the country.
This is a side of just sports in general that is just not spoken about, and I really want to spread awareness about that so that there are not other kids that have to hurt in the same way that I did.
Up next, the push to stop schools from withdrawing recruitment offers to young athletes. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Well, it's no secret that the auto industry is rapidly changing. Gas prices are skyrocketing, and artificial intelligence is literally reinventing how we hit the road. Well, this morning in our series Business in America, NBC News Chief Business Correspondent Christine Romans sat down with Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors, to talk about what it takes to stay on top during these turbulent times.
In the world's largest automotive wind tunnel, decades of aerodynamic vehicle testing is shifting into the future. General Motors CEO Mary Barra says artificial intelligence is moving car design into the fast lane. Just a click, making small tweaks to the roof here with instant results.
We have an AI tool that allows us to do and estimate what the aero is going to be on a concept, really dial it in. And then when we get the design, then we take it into the actual wind tunnel and do the final work.
Barra is a 46-year veteran of GM. At 18, she started as a quality inspector. She rose to chair and CEO, a position she's held for 12 years. She's the only woman to lead a major global car company.
To dream, to design, to style for you.
Celebrating its 70th anniversary, GM's Design Center sits just outside Detroit.
This is where we literally design what the vehicle's going to look like inside and outside.
Here, old school clay modeling side by side with modern machines, and sketches from automotive artists transformed using AI prompts for a realistic rendering of a new Corvette, even envisioning it on the road.
This is something that used to take weeks and now is being done in minutes. And what that helps
from weeks to minutes.
Weeks to minutes. It allows us to explore more concept, more ideas to make sure we get the right one.
Is AI going to allow you to make cars with fewer people, do you think?
I think it's how we give the tools to the people to be able to do better work. And to me, it's how do we do more with the people that we have because we're using AI tools.
She says higher gas prices aren't denting demand. The GM is squarely focused on affordability with 6 models starting at $30,000 or less, including its all-electric Bolt, a price on par with Chinese EVs from manufacturers like BYD. Tom Yamas recently drove one of those cars while reporting in China.
You could buy this car in America. How much would it cost? So $25,000 here, you add about $10,000, $35,000, still a pretty good deal.
But Barra is among American auto execs saying that deal shouldn't be an option in the U.S., citing unfair Chinese government subsidies and the connected technology that could lead to spying on Americans.
General Motors needs to have a level playing field, and then we need to compete. Yeah. I think we have to look at it and the jobs that are provided from an economy perspective, and then also look at it from a national security perspective.
What would the level playing field look like for you?
Equivalent tariffs and not being subsidized.
In an industry changing faster than ever, Mara says GM is poised to win.
I'm confident that we can compete, and we're working every day to continue to make our business more efficient so we can give the customer more.
After more than 4 decades with GM, Mara is still excited for the road ahead. Christine Romans, NBC News, Michigan.
Well, playing sports in college is a dream for many student athletes, but it's also a big business, and recruiting rules can be unclear, differing from school to school and sport to sport. Young players rely on commitments to secure those competitive roster spots. But what happens when the school decides to withdraw its offer? NBC News Now anchor Vicki Wynn has more on what students and families need to know about this potentially heartbreaking reality.
Multiple DUIs, cocaine trafficking. That's U.S. Senate candidate Mark Lynch's rap sheet. Lynch's business also got caught breaking the immigration law that protects our jobs. Mark Lynch, a rap sheet fit for a convict, not a U.S. senator. Marty's 2-for-5 breakfast makes match. Now let you choose the sausage biscuit, sausage egg biscuit, biscuit.
Menlo High School senior Ava Wang discovered her love of volleyball in 5th grade.
Like the second I touched the ball, I was just like, this is the sport for me.
By middle school, she was training up to 20 hours a week, gaining national attention. Ava's dream of playing for the University of Pennsylvania came true early. The summer after sophomore year, UPenn coaches asked for a meeting with Ava and her mom.
They told me, we really love to have Ava on our team, and I could see the glow in her eyes. She was so excited.
That was the best day of my life.
Ava says the verbal offer was clear. She was expected to apply to Penn, maintain her academics, and stop talking to other schools.
Did you hold up your end of the bargain?
Absolutely.
But a year later, the coach who recruited Ava left. Shortly after, the new coach told her she lost her spot because she didn't meet the academic standards, something Ava and her parents dispute, saying the school assured her multiple times that her coursework and grades were on track for admissions. Ava had been decommitted, meaning that verbal offer no longer stood.
The hardest part is watching our once brave, powerful, strong, confident daughter just spiral into this black hole and doubt everything about herself.
Penn declined to be interviewed, citing student privacy, but said in a statement, Penn Athletics is committed to recruiting highly qualified and athletically gifted student athletes.
Decommitting has happened for decades.
Ramogi Huma is an advocate for college athletes.
Why do schools do this?
They do it for typically 2 reasons. One is the schools often offer more opportunities and scholarships than they have to give. The other is that the school changes their mind, and the system is not like this on accident. It's been designed this way. It gives schools a maximum leverage.
No agency tracks how many student athletes get decommitted by schools each year, but some are sharing their stories online.
Sometimes they will ghost you, and it's not fair. It's not nice, but it does happen.
Didn't call, didn't even text, just sent an email saying thanks, but no thanks.
When somebody says to an athlete, trust me or trust us, you absolutely shouldn't do that.
Darren Heitner is a sports attorney who advises athletes and families.
Does a verbal agreement have any legal standing?
A verbal agreement means absolutely nothing in most contexts, including in college sports.
Adding to the hurt for Ava, Penn decommitted her after the summer recruiting window, leaving her in limbo.
Just seeing that doors were just continuing to close with this dream that I had was really gut-wrenching.
Did it feel cool to you, the way it was handled?
Extremely cool. Extremely cool, because you're putting a senior who was just really excited to come to your campus, play for you, and suddenly, she's gonna have a home.
Huma says there is one thing student athletes should do when they receive a verbal offer: respond with an email.
Say thank you for the offer, and I'm happy to accept. I'm excited. It may not be exactly a legal solution or silver bullet, but there's something there.
As for Ava, a silver lining. She's continuing her volleyball career at Columbia University, joining the team this fall.
This is a side of just sports in general that is just not spoken about, and I really want to spread awareness about that so that there are not other kids that have to hurt in the same way that I did.
Vicki, thanks so much for that report. College sports experts say there's very little incentive for schools to change the system, but they recommend talking with a lawyer and keeping your options open until you have that offer in writing. Well, now I've got a fun one for you. For decades, the Muppets, of course, have been a staple in households across America. Well, now people can get...
Okay, we're going to go ahead and cut it off here. I thank y'all for being here. Pray and hope see y'all again soon.